Hi guys, tomorrow it's Monday and I just wanted to teach something a lot of people get mistaken. How does a client, a computer or a server determines what domain controller he uses in order to authenticate? Well, a lot of engineers, just like myself, thought that the primary DNS that was integrated in the server or computer was also the primary domain controller the client would authenticate against. However, this is not true. So with the primary DNS, I mean, if you go to ipconfig/all, you'll see the primary DNS IP. A lot of people thought that this would also be the domain controller that the server or computer uses to authenticate. To see what the domain controller the user authenticates, you can look at what logon server it uses. You can do that by set logon server, and here you can view what logon server is being used. Let's now talk about the truth, how it really works. Because I was in a case where I had the Azure Virtual Machine, also created together with the Azure Domain Controller. However, when I went to the Azure Virtual Machine, I noticed that the logon server was a domain controller that was not the new Azure Domain Controller, but it was a domain controller that was so far away. It was in another country, but it was in the same domain because there was an IPsec tunnel between Azure and the local domain. And that was questioning me on how can I force the client or server to a specific domain controller. So in fact, how does it work? How does a client or server choose what domain controller he uses? Well, the primary DNS controller has a function. It goes, it will use the primary DNS server to query for SRV records in the domain. And the comment that the CMDLET that is used is this. This is a DNS query against the domain from the customer. And if you press enter, you can see 3 domain controllers that are inside of this domain. And the client or server will pick the first domain controller that's listed here. So the primary DNS has something to do with choosing what DC to authenticate. However, in my case, if I wanted to force a server on a specific DC because it's more logic, then we can do this, and we do this on the domain controller itself. So I navigate to my domain controller. We go to Active Directory, Sites and Services. And here you can see the sites and services. You can see the sites. And by default, you will see one site with all of the domain controllers listed under servers. However, if you want to separate them between on-premise and Azure, you can create a new site. And now the cool thing you can do is you can define a subnet and link that subnet to a specific site. So for example, the subnet 172.16.0.0/24. I know that this subnet is from servers that are located in Azure. So I want them to be, or to choose the primary authenticator through the Azure Domain Controller. And you can do this by saying new subnet. I want to pick 16.1.0. This subnet has to choose the domain, the site in Azure. And this is how it works. Just note, you define the subnet, you link it to the site. In the site is the domain controller that you needed. If in case one of the sites goes down, or there's only one domain controller and it's not working, by default it will start looking in other sites, also try to authenticate the client or server. So this was a short little informational video. I hope you guys liked it, and see you later.